The chain snapped tight across the bridge just as the first SUV tried to push through. Tires screeched. The smell of hot rubber filled the morning air. I didn't move. The steel links rattled in my hands, vibrating like they were alive. That's when the horn started. 1. Then 5. Then a wall of noise echoing off the valley. Something felt off immediately. This wasn't just traffic. This was panic. A woman in a white Lexus jumped out, heels clicking hard against the concrete. She waved a stack of papers like they meant something. "You can't block a community access road," she said. Her voice carried, sharp and confident. Too confident. I looked past her. Cars stretched back as far as I could see. Contractors. School drop-offs. Delivery trucks idling in place. All of them waiting. All of them stuck. That didn't make sense. This bridge sat miles outside the HOA boundary. Or at least, that's what I'd been told. I tightened my grip on the chain. The cold metal bit into my palm. Something wasn't adding up. "Move it," she snapped again, stepping closer. The scent of expensive perfume cut through the diesel fumes. She didn't hesitate. Like she'd done this before. That's when I noticed the sign bolted to the guardrail. Fresh metal. Bright paint. Willow Creek Community Bridge Access. My bridge. I hadn't seen that yesterday. I knew I hadn't. The bolts were still shiny. The edges still raw. Someone put that up overnight. My jaw tightened. I could taste something metallic. I glanced down the length of the structure. Every car on it. Every tire. Every inch of weight pressing into steel I was responsible for. Liability hit me first. Then something worse. Dependence. They weren't just using it. They needed it. The Lexus woman followed my gaze and smiled, just a little. Like she knew exactly what I was thinking. That's when the unease settled in deeper. "We have full access rights," she said, tapping her papers. But she didn't hand them over. Not yet. Another horn blasted behind her. Longer this time. Frustrated. Urgent. A delivery driver leaned out his window, shouting something I couldn't make out. The sound bounced off the water below. Everything felt louder than it should. Like the bridge itself was holding its breath. I stepped back one pace. The chain held. Solid. Unmoved. That's when a thought slipped in. Quiet. Sharp. Why would hundreds of people rely on a bridge that isn't theirs? I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folded deed. The paper was worn at the edges already. I'd checked it twice when I bought the land. 5,000 acres. Clean title. No shared access. No easements listed. Nothing. At least, nothing obvious. My eyes moved faster this time. Line by line. Parcel numbers. Survey notes. Coordinates. The wind picked up just enough to rattle the chain again. It sounded different now. Not like resistance. Like warning. I looked back up at the line of cars. Then at the woman. Then at the sign. Something had changed. And I was the last one to know. I folded the deed slowly. That's when I realized they'd already built their lives around this bridge. I bought the land because it was quiet. No neighbors. No rules. Just open ground stretching for miles and the low hum of wind across dry grass. 5,000 acres of it. My father used to say land like this does not belong to you, you take care of it for the next generation. That stuck with me. The first time I drove out here, the gravel crunched under my tires like it was welcoming me back. That feeling did not last. Not once I saw the bridge. It sat low across the river, Steel beams dark from age, water sliding under it like glass. Nothing fancy. But solid. Built to last. I remember stepping out of the truck that day, boots hitting the dirt, the air carrying that faint metallic smell you only get near old infrastructure. Something about it felt intentional. Like it mattered more than the rest of the land. I asked the surveyor about it. He barely looked up from his tablet. Said it was just an access crossing. Nothing special. That answer never sat right with me. I walked the full length of it anyway. Slow. Listening to each step echo across the metal. The sound carried farther than it should have. Like it was warning me. That was the first time I noticed the tire marks. Fresh. Too fresh. Deep grooves cut into the dust at both ends of the bridge. More. Then a few vehicles. A lot more. I crouched down and touched the dirt. Still loose. Still shifting. Someone had been using this crossing regularly. But there were no houses out here. No roads leading anywhere important. That made no sense. I checked the perimeter that afternoon. Fence lines were intact. Boundary markers still where they should be. No official road access cutting through. No easement signs. Nothing filed. At least nothing visible. The sun dropped low while I was still walking. Long shadows stretched across the ground. The kind that make everything look different. That is when I saw it. A faint trail cutting through the brush on the far side. Not a road. Not officially. But worn enough to guide a line of vehicles straight toward the bridge. I followed it a few hundred yards. Then I stopped. I could hear something in the distance. Faint at first. Then clearer. Engines. More than one. That should not have been possible out here. I stood still, letting the sound carry. It came from beyond the ridge line. Somewhere just out of view. That was the moment I realized I did not fully understand what I had bought. The next morning, I came back earlier. The air was colder. Still. Quiet in a way that felt staged. I parked off to the side and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Nothing moved. No sound. I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Then I saw the first vehicle crest the ridge. A pickup truck. Moving slow. Careful. Like it was following a path it knew by memory. It did not stop. It did not hesitate. It rolled straight toward the bridge like it belonged there. Then another car followed. And another. No signs. No permission. Just routine. That is when the pattern started to form. And it did not feel like an accident anymore. I did not approach them right away. I stayed back near the ridge and watched. One truck crossed. Then another. Then a line formed like it was part of a schedule. No hesitation. No checking. They drove across my bridge like it had always been theirs. That was the part that bothered me most. Routine. It was too clean. Too practiced. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The early light hit the metal beams just right. Casting long shadows under each vehicle as they passed. Every tire made the same hollow sound. Steel echoing under weight. It repeated over and over. That rhythm stuck in my head. I counted 12 vehicles before the flow slowed. Then it stopped completely. Silence came back fast. Like someone flipped a switch. I stepped forward a few yards. Still no one noticed me. That told me something else. They were not expecting resistance. I walked down to the edge of the bridge and placed my hand on the railing. Cold. Solid. Mine. At least on paper. I looked across the river toward where they came from. The ridge blocked most of it, but I could see rooftops in the distance. Uniform. Clean lines. A planned neighborhood. That explained the volume. It did not explain the access. I went back to my truck and pulled out the survey map again. Spread it across the hood. The paper snapped lightly in the breeze. Parcel lines. Boundaries. Markers. The bridge sat fully inside my property. No shared line. No split ownership. Clean. I traced the direction of that trail I had followed yesterday. It cut straight through my land and connected directly to that neighborhood. No deviation. No buffer. Just a line drawn like it had always been approved. But I knew it had not. That is when I noticed something new. A faint marking near the edge of the map. A note I had ignored before. Small. Easy to miss. It referenced an old county access route. Decommissioned. Decades ago. My eyes narrowed. If it was decommissioned, it should not be in use. Not like this. I folded the map slowly. Something was wrong at a level deeper than simple trespassing. I drove out toward the main road that afternoon. It took longer than I expected. The terrain was rough in places. No official road cut through from my side. That meant something important. The bridge was not just convenient. It was necessary. I reached the county office before closing. The building smelled like paper and dust. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I asked for records on that old access route. The clerk hesitated. Just for a second. Then she pulled a file. Thick. Older than it should have been. I flipped through it standing at the counter. Permits. Closures. Notices. The route had been shut down after flood damage years ago. Marked unsafe. Removed from county maintenance. No public access since then. That should have ended it. But it did not. Because somehow, that neighborhood behind the ridge had grown anyway. Without a legal road. Without an official connection. My grip tightened on the file. I could feel the edge of something bigger. Not just a mistake. Not just a shortcut. Something built on an assumption that no one would question it. I handed the file back and walked out into the late afternoon light. The sky was turning orange. Long shadows again. Same as yesterday. I stood there for a moment, letting it settle. They had built an entire system around a bridge they did not own. And they had been getting away with it. That is when I realized I had not met the person behind it yet. I did not have to look for her. She found me. It was late morning when I returned to the bridge again. The sun was higher now, burning off the cool air, leaving that dry heat that settles into your skin. I heard the engine before I saw the car. Smooth. Quiet. Expensive. The white SUV rolled up slow, stopping just short of the bridge like it was marking territory. The door opened with a soft click. She stepped out like she owned the ground under her heels. Perfect posture. Controlled movements. No hesitation. That told me more than anything else. You must be Ethan, she said, like we had already been introduced. I did not answer right away. I watched her instead. The way she glanced at the bridge. Not curious. Not cautious. Familiar. That was the first real confirmation. She had been here before. Many times. Victoria Ashford, she added, extending her hand but not stepping closer. She did not need to. The distance felt intentional. Like a boundary she expected me to respect. I did not take her hand. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the faint scent of leather and something floral. Clean. Precise. Controlled. Just like her. You put up a sign on my bridge, I said. Simple. Direct. Her smile did not change. It is a community access point, she replied. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Just stated like fact. That was the second signal. She believed it. Or she wanted me to believe she did. I glanced at the sign again. The paint already drying in the heat. Too new to belong. There is no easement, I said. Her eyes flicked to me. Just for a second. Then back to calm. There are understandings, she said. That word hung there longer than it should have. Understandings. Not contracts. Not filings. Something softer. Something harder to prove. I let the silence sit. Cars began lining up behind her again. Engines idling. Waiting. The same pattern. Every time. That meant she controlled more than just the conversation. She controlled the flow. You are interfering with daily operations, she added, gesturing lightly toward the line of vehicles forming behind her SUV. Not a request. A statement. Like I was the problem that needed to be removed. I stepped closer to the chain stretched across the bridge. The metal clicked softly as it shifted. Her eyes followed the movement. Careful. Calculating. That was the third signal. She knew the bridge mattered. This land was purchased legally, I said. All of it. She nodded once. Slow. Patient. Of course, she said. And we appreciate that. That word again. We. Not I. Not the HOA. Something broader. I looked past her toward the ridge. The rooftops were clearer now in the daylight. Dozens of them. Maybe more. All depending on this crossing. That scale changed everything. This was not a neighbor issue. This was infrastructure. Then you also know, I said, that access is not included. Her smile tightened just slightly. Barely noticeable. But it was there. Access has been established for years, she replied. There it was. The shift. Not legal language. Habit language. Usage. Assumption. I could feel the structure of it now. They had been using it long enough that it felt permanent. Permanent without permission. A horn sounded behind her. Sharper this time. Impatient. She did not turn. She did not react. That meant something else. She was used to controlling the pressure. We can formalize things, she said. If necessary. The way she said it made it sound like a favor. Like I should be grateful. I looked down at the chain again. Then back. At her. The sunlight reflected off the metal links, flashing briefly into my eyes. Something about that moment locked into place. They had built everything around convenience. Not ownership. Not law. Convenience. And they expected it to continue. I could feel it now. The weight of it. Not just the bridge. The entire system behind it. Resting on something they did not actually have. I let out a slow breath. The air tasted dry. Quiet. Still. Then I realized she was waiting for me to step aside. I did not move. The chain stayed exactly where it was, stretched tight across the entrance. The metal creaked softly as a breeze passed through. Victoria watched me without blinking. She expected hesitation. She expected negotiation. That much was clear. I rested my hand on the railing again. Cold. Steady. Mine. You should move this, she said, her tone softer now, but not weaker. More deliberate. Like she was adjusting strategy. Behind her, another car pulled up. Then another. The line grew faster this time. Word was spreading. That was the fourth signal. This was bigger than a simple crossing. I looked at the drivers. Some leaned forward over their steering wheels. Others checked their phones. None of them got out. None of them questioned it. That routine again. It ran deep. How long has this been happening? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. Long enough, she said. Not an answer. A boundary. I nodded once. That confirmed it. This was not temporary. This was built into their lives. I stepped closer to the chain and gave it a small pull. It held firm. The sound echoed down the bridge, hollow and sharp. A few drivers looked up at that. Finally. Attention shifted. That mattered. There is no recorded access, I said. No agreement. No filing. She exhaled slowly, like she had already gone through this conversation in her head. There is precedent, she replied. That word again. Not legal. Behavioral. Something people lean on when paperwork is missing. I could feel the gap now. The difference between what was real and what they believed was real. That gap was where everything sat. A truck engine revved somewhere in the line. Short. Frustrated. The sound bounced off. The water below and came back distorted. It made everything feel tighter. More compressed. Victoria glanced back briefly, then returned her focus to me. She was measuring something. Timing. Pressure. We can compensate you, she said. There it was. The shift from assumption to transaction. But it came too late. The tone gave it away. This was not a fair offer. This was damage control. I shook my head once. Slow. That is not how this works, I said. Her expression did not change, but something behind it did. Subtle. A recalculation. That was the fifth signal. She had not expected resistance at this level. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the deed again. Held it where she could see the edges. Not offering it. Just enough to remind her it existed. The paper caught the light for a second. This is private infrastructure, I said. Fully contained within my boundary. She watched the paper, not my face. That told me where her focus really was. Ownership. Proof. Control. A car horn cut through the air again. Longer now. Less patient. The line behind her had doubled. Maybe more. The pressure was building in real time. And she could feel it. You are creating a problem, she said. The words came faster this time. Less polished. I let that sit for a moment. Then I looked past her again at the rooftops in the distance. All of it tied to this one crossing. All of it moving through something they did not own. The scale hit harder now. Not just cars. Not just convenience. Entire routines. School runs. Deliveries. Emergency access. Everything. I lowered the deed slowly. The wind caught the edge of it, fluttering once before settling. No, I said. I am revealing one. The silence that followed felt different. Thicker. Even the engine seemed quieter for a second. Like the bridge itself was listening. Victoria did not respond immediately. That was new. The first real pause. Her eyes shifted slightly, scanning the structure again. Not casually this time. Carefully. Like she was seeing it differently. Finally. That meant she was starting to understand. But not fully. Not yet. And that was when I realized something else. She had been operating on the belief that this situation could not change. Victoria did not speak right away. That was new. The line of cars behind her stretched even farther now, engines idling in uneven rhythm. Heat shimmered above the hoods, distorting the air. Someone opened a door. Then closed it again. No one wanted to step out. That told me something else. They were used to being managed. Not deciding. Victoria adjusted her stance, shifting her weight slightly, heels pressing into the concrete. It was a small movement, but it broke her stillness. "You are overreacting," she said finally. The words came out smooth, but the timing was off. Too late. I shook my head once. Slow. "No," I said. "I am just early." That landed differently. I could see it in her eyes. Not confusion. Recognition. She understood the direction now. Maybe not the outcome, but the shift. That was enough. A truck further back honked twice, sharp and quick. Another followed. The sound started to layer, building into something restless. The bridge carried every vibration. I could feel it through the railing under my hand. That constant hum. Pressure without release. I looked down the length of the structure again. Every vehicle lined up on steel I was responsible for. No inspections requested. No permissions granted. Just use. That was the sixth signal. Risk had been ignored completely. How many people live back there? I asked. She did not answer immediately. Her eyes flicked toward the ridge again. Then back to me. "Enough," she said. Another boundary. But weaker this time. I nodded slightly. That was all I needed. Enough meant scale. Enough meant dependency. Enough meant leverage. I stepped away from the railing and walked a few paces toward my truck. Not fast. Not slow. Just enough to shift the dynamic. I heard movement behind me. Not from her. From the line. Doors opening now. Voices starting to rise. Low at first. Then overlapping. Questions. Complaints. Confusion. The routine was breaking. That mattered. I reached into the truck bed and pulled out a small metal case. Set it on the ground. Opened it. The hinges clicked softly in the heat. Inside were tools. Nothing dramatic. Just equipment. But it changed how the moment felt. I could sense it behind me. The shift in attention. I picked up a second chain. Heavier. Thicker links. The metal clinked as it moved. That sound carried farther than I expected. Conversations dipped. Not silence. But close. Victoria took a step forward. Just one. "What are you doing?" she asked. That was the first real question she had asked. Not a statement. Not a correction. A question. I did not answer right away. I walked back to the bridge entrance and ran the second chain through a lower support beam. Slow. Precise. Each link sliding into place. The structure amplified every movement. The sound echoed under the span and out across the water. It felt deliberate. Because it was. Reinforcing, I said finally. Simple. Clear. Her expression tightened again. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice. That was the seventh signal. She was starting to lose control of the pace. Behind her, someone shouted louder this time. Frustration breaking through. A driver stepped out fully now, hands on hips, scanning the scene like it might explain itself. It did not. That tension spread fast. Faster than I expected. I secured the second chain and stepped back. The entrance was fully blocked now. No gaps. No assumptions left. I wiped my hands slowly, feeling the dust and metal residue against my skin. The air felt different. Thicker. Charged. Not chaotic. Just unsettled. Victoria looked at the barrier, then at me, then back at the growing line of people behind her. For the first time, she did not speak immediately. That pause stretched longer than before. Long enough for the sound of idling engines to feel like pressure building in a closed space. And that was when I realized she was not thinking about the bridge anymore. The noise behind her did not stop this time. It kept building. Doors slammed. Voices overlapped. Someone pointed toward the chains like it was a mistake that needed fixing. Victoria turned halfway, just enough to acknowledge them, but not enough to engage. That hesitation mattered. It was the first crack. I stayed where I was. Still. Watching. The bridge carried every sound upward. Footsteps. Engines. Even the small shifts of weight as people stepped out of their cars. It all echoed through the steel. That constant vibration had changed. It was no longer routine. It was tension. A man in a work shirt walked up beside her, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We need to get through," he said. Direct. No filter. She raised a hand slightly, stopping him without looking. Control. Even now. But slower. Less certain. That was the 8th signal. I glanced at the line again. It had doubled since I first arrived. Maybe tripled. Some drivers leaned against their doors. Others paced a few steps, then stopped. No one crossed the line. The chain held more than metal now. It held expectation. "This is temporary," Victoria said, louder this time, projecting her voice toward the crowd behind her. Not to me. To them. That told me who she was really managing. I watched their reactions. Some nodded. Some did not. That split was new. Before, there had been no question. Now there was doubt. And doubt spreads fast. I shifted my stance slightly, letting the sunlight catch the chains. The reflection flashed across the front windshields, sharp and bright. It forced a few people to shield their eyes. Small detail. But it changed how the barrier looked. Not invisible anymore. Not assumed. Real. Temporary depends on facts, I said. Calm. Even. She turned back toward me, faster this time. Facts can be discussed, she replied. That word again. Discussed. Not proven. Not documented. It stayed in that gray space she had been using all along. I could feel the pattern now. She operated in gaps. Areas where no one pushed back hard enough to require clarity. That worked. Until it did not. A phone rang somewhere in the line. Then another. People were calling. Work. Schools. Deliveries. The ripple effect had started. That was the 9th signal. This was no longer contained. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. Not the deed this time. A copy of the county record I had seen yesterday. I held it in my hand but did not open it. Just enough for her to see the seal at the corner. Her eyes locked onto it instantly. That reaction was quick. Uncontrolled. Important. That route was closed years ago, I said. Quiet, but clear. Her expression did not fully change, but the pause returned. Longer than before. She knew what I was referring to. That confirmed it. This was not ignorance. This was choice. The man beside her shifted again, looking between us. What does that mean? He asked, not to her, not to me, just into the air. No one answered him. That silence carried more weight than any explanation. I unfolded the paper halfway. The edges fluttered in the warm breeze. The county stamp caught the light. Official. Hard to ignore. It means this was never approved, I said. No emphasis. Just fact. The sound behind her shifted again. Not louder. Different. Less frustration. More concern. That transition was subtle, but it changed everything. Victoria looked at the paper. Then at the bridge. Then at the line of people behind her. She was recalculating again. But this time, the variables were not just mine. And that was when I saw it. For the first time, she was not controlling the narrative anymore. The crowd did not sound the same anymore. The sharp edges of frustration had softened into something heavier. People were not just waiting now. They were thinking. I could see it in the way they looked at the bridge, then at Victoria, then back at the chains. That loop repeated over and over. It was spreading. Doubt had entered the system. I kept the document half open in my hand. Not waving it. Not hiding it. Just present. That balance mattered. Victoria took a slow breath, then stepped closer. Not all the way. Just enough to lower her voice without losing control of the space behind her. That document is outdated, she said. The words were measured, but they landed differently this time. Less certain. I tilted my head slightly. The county seal is not, I replied. Simple. Direct. No extra weight. That shift hit the people behind her harder than it hit her. I could feel it. A few conversations stopped mid-sentence. A man near the front pulled out his phone and started typing fast. That was the 10th signal. Information was moving beyond this moment. Victoria noticed it too. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the movement, then back to me. She was tracking more than one problem now. That was new. We have maintained this route for years, she said, raising her voice again, addressing the group as much as me. There has never been an issue. That phrasing mattered. Maintained. Not owned. Not approved. Just used. I let that hang in the air. No response. Silence can be louder than correction when people are already questioning. The wind shifted again, carrying dust across the entrance. It brushed against the chains, making a soft scraping sound. The kind that makes you notice something physical. Real. I glanced down at the contact points where the metal met the beam. No wear patterns beyond normal use. That detail stood out. If this had been an official access point for years, there would be more signs. Reinforcement. Modification. Something. But there was none. Just original structure. That confirmed it again. This had been happening quietly. Without proper load consideration. Without inspection. That thought stayed with me. I looked back up at the line of vehicles. The weight of all of them combined. Every day. Every morning. Every evening. That was more than casual use. That was dependency layered over time. Victoria stepped another half-pace forward. Subtle. Careful. We can resolve this privately, she said. Lower now. More controlled. The crowd behind her did not need to hear that part. That told me something else. She was trying to contain it again. Pull it back into a space she could manage. I shook my head slightly. This is already public, I said. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The line of people behind her made that clear. A woman near the second row stepped out of her car fully now, arms crossed, watching closely. Another driver leaned against his door, no longer pretending this was routine. The shift had completed. This was no longer normal. Victoria held her position. Her posture stayed straight, but her timing was off again. A fraction too slow between breaths. A fraction too long before speaking. Small things. But they add up. I folded the document once more and slid it back into my jacket. That movement drew more attention than holding it out. It suggested something else was coming. Not finished. Not resolved. Just paused. That uncertainty spread faster than anything I could have said. A breeze moved across the water below, carrying a faint echo up through the structure. It sounded hollow. Like something unfinished. I rested my hand on the chain again, feeling the slight vibration from the idling engines. Constant. Pressing. Waiting. Victoria followed the movement of my hand, then looked past me toward the far end of the bridge. For the first time, her focus extended beyond this side. That shift was quiet, but it mattered. Because she was no longer looking at the people behind her. She was looking at what they were about to lose. The air felt different now. Not louder. Just heavier. Conversations behind Victoria had stopped trying to stay quiet. People were asking questions out loud. Real questions. Not complaints. Not anymore. That shift mattered more than anything else so far. I stayed where I was, one hand resting lightly on the chain, feeling the constant vibration from the engines. It was steady. Almost like a pulse. Victoria did not turn around this time. She knew what was happening behind her. She just was not ready to face it yet. That told me everything. I took a slow step forward, closing the distance by a few feet. Not aggressive. Just enough to change the angle. You built around this, I said. Calm. Clear. She did not answer. Her eyes stayed on the bridge, but I could see the focus slipping. Not fully on me. Not fully on the structure. Somewhere in between. That was the 11th signal. She was calculating outcomes now. Not controlling inputs. A man near the front of the line stepped closer, stopping just behind her shoulder. Is this true? He asked. The question hung in the air. No one rushed to fill it. That silence carried weight. Victoria inhaled slowly, then exhaled through her nose. Controlled. Practiced. We have always had access, she said. But she did not look at him when she said it. She looked at me. That choice mattered. She was no longer speaking to her people. She was negotiating with me. I let that sit for a moment. Then I shook my head slightly. You have always had usage, I said. That is not the same thing. A few people behind her shifted at that. You could hear it. Shoes scraping lightly against pavement. Small movements. But together, they created a ripple. The difference between those two words landed. Usage versus ownership. That line is where everything changes. I glanced down the length of the bridge again. The steel beams held steady under the weight. But I knew what they were not designed for. Continuous, unregulated traffic. No load management. No maintenance oversight. That thought stayed with me. Not as a threat. As a fact. I looked back at Victoria. You have been running traffic across private infrastructure without authorization, I said. That carries risk. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The word risk traveled fast. Faster than anything else I had said. A woman near the third row stepped out of her car and moved closer, arms folded tight. Another man pulled his phone down slowly, no longer typing. They were listening now. Fully. Victoria finally turned halfway toward the line behind her. Just enough to acknowledge them. There is no danger, she said. But the timing was wrong again. Too quick. Too reactive. That was the 12th signal. She was no longer setting the pace. She was responding to it. I stepped back one pace, giving the scene more space to expand. That movement drew attention. It suggested I was not trying to dominate the moment. Just hold it. That difference mattered. The wind moved across the bridge again, carrying a faint metallic echo up from below. It sounded hollow. Like something under strain. Not breaking. Just holding. I watched the faces in the line now. Confusion. Concern. A few starting to connect the pieces. Not all at once. But enough. Victoria turned back to me fully now. Her posture still straight, but her eyes sharper. Focused. Intent. "What do you want?" she asked. There it was. The first direct question that mattered. Not about process. Not about access. About outcome. I held her gaze for a second, then looked past her again at the ridge. At the homes. At the scale of it all. Then back at the chain between us. The metal links shifted slightly as the wind passed through again. Quiet. Steady. Waiting. I let a moment pass before answering. Just long. Enough for the silence to grow. Because the answer was not simple. And she was not ready for it yet. I let the silence sit just a second longer than it should have. Not to stall. To let it settle in. The engines kept humming behind her. Steady. Impatient. Waiting for something to break. I looked back at Victoria. Her eyes did not move now. Locked in. Focused. That question mattered to her more than anything else so far. "What do you want?" she had asked. Not "what do you need?" Not "what is fair?" What do you want? That difference stayed with me. I exhaled slowly and stepped closer to the chain again. The metal links shifted slightly under my fingers. That small sound carried farther than expected. A few heads turned. Attention tightened. "Clarity," I said. One word. No extra weight. It landed flat at first. Then it spread. You could see it in the faces behind her. Confusion. Then curiosity. Victoria narrowed her eyes slightly. "Clarity about what?" she asked. Faster now. She wanted structure back. Control. I shook my head once. "About what this is," I said, gesturing lightly toward the bridge. "And what it is not." The distinction hung there. Subtle. But sharp. A man behind her muttered something under his breath. Another voice answered. The conversation shifted again. Less about getting through. More about understanding why they could not. That change mattered more than anything I could say next. Victoria straightened slightly. Resetting posture. Regaining tone. "This is access," she said. "It always has been." I watched her carefully. The confidence was still there. But it had edges now. Defensive ones. I let a small pause settle before answering. "Then it should be documented," I said. "It is not." That landed harder than before. Because now they were listening. Fully. A woman near the front stepped closer, standing just behind Victoria now. Her arms were still crossed, but her attention had shifted completely. That told me the line had moved from frustration to concern. The engines kept idling. Heat rising off the hoods. The smell of fuel mixed with warm metal. It made the air feel thicker. Harder to ignore. "We can handle documentation," Victoria said. "That is not an issue." The timing was off again. Too quick. Too certain. I tilted my head slightly. "It is already an issue," I said. "That is why we are here." Another small ripple moved through the crowd. Not loud. But present. People were starting to connect the sequence. Use without approval. Routine without permission. That gap again. It was widening now. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small notebook. Flipped it open. Blank pages. Clean. I held it up just enough for her to see. Not writing yet. Just showing it existed. If this is access, I said, then it needs terms. That word changed everything. Terms meant structure. Terms meant control shifting. Terms meant cost. Victoria's eyes flicked to the notebook, then back to me. That reaction was quick. Unfiltered. Important. She understood where this was going. The man beside her shifted his weight again. What kind of terms? He asked. Not to her this time. To me. That was new. The line had shifted sides. Not fully. But enough. I closed the notebook slowly without answering. Let the question hang. Let it grow. Because once people start asking that question, the answer stops being optional. The wind moved across the bridge again, brushing against the chains. The sound was soft. Almost quiet. But it carried. I looked past Victoria once more toward the ridge. Toward the homes that depended on this crossing. Then back at the line of people now waiting for an answer. I could feel it. The moment had changed. Not resolved. Not settled. Just opened. And once it opens, it does not close the same way again. The question did not go away. It spread. What kind of terms? I could hear it again, quieter now, repeated between people in the line. Not frustration anymore. Calculation. That shift was everything. I kept the notebook closed in my hand. Not writing yet. Not offering. Just holding the idea in place. Victoria did not like that. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened for a split second. Then it was gone. Composure again. But thinner now. This is not how access works, she said. Her tone was sharper this time. Less polished. I looked at her, then at the bridge, then back at her again. It is exactly how it works, I said. Calm. Even. No push. Just fact. The man beside her shifted closer to the chain. He did not cross it. No one did. That boundary had become real now. Not just metal. Meaning. He looked down at the links, then back at me. So what happens if we do not agree? He asked. That question landed heavier than the last one. Not curious. Concerned. I let a small pause sit between us. The engines behind him kept running. A constant reminder of time moving forward. Then nothing changes, I said. This stays closed. The words were simple. But they carried weight. You could feel it ripple through the line. Not loud. Just a shift in posture. Shoulders tightening. Eyes narrowing. The reality was settling in. Victoria stepped forward again. Closer than before. Not close enough to cross the line. But enough to change the space between us. You are disrupting an entire community, she said. The word community hung there. Heavy. Designed to carry emotion. I did not react to it. I had already seen what was behind it. No, I said. I am exposing how it functions. That distinction mattered. And people heard it. A woman behind her uncrossed her arms. That small movement stood out. Like something opening. Victoria exhaled slowly. She was adjusting again. Searching for footing. We can draft an agreement, she said. Temporary access while we formalize a long-term solution. The offer came faster now. Less controlled. That told me something else. Pressure was reaching her. I looked at the bridge again. Then at the line. Then back at her. Temporary already happened, I said. For years. That landed harder than anything else I had said. Because it reframed everything. Not a request. Not a favor. A pattern. The man near the front shook his head slightly, almost to himself. We were never told that, he said. That was the 13th signal. Information had been managed. Selectively. I watched Victoria closely. That statement hit her. Not visibly. But internally. You could see the pause. The recalculation. She was no longer dealing with one problem. She was dealing with many. At once. I opened the notebook slowly this time. Flipped to the first page. The paper made a soft sound in the heat. It drew attention again. Every small action mattered now. Terms are simple, I said. Defined use. Defined responsibility. Defined cost. Each word landed separately. Clear. Structured. The kind of clarity that leaves little room to move around it. The crowd behind her went quiet again. Not fully silent. But focused. Listening. That was new. Victoria held her position. Her eyes moved from the notebook to the chain, then to the line behind her. Then back to me. Slower this time. More deliberate. She understood what this meant. Not just for today. For everything built behind that ridge. I let the page stay blank for a second longer. Then I lifted the pen slightly. Not writing yet. Just enough to show the next step was real. And that was when I realized she was not deciding alone anymore. The pen hovered just above the paper. I did not write yet. The space between decision and action stretched longer than anyone expected. The engines behind Victoria kept running, but softer now. Not quieter. Just less certain. People were watching. Not waiting anymore. Watching. That difference mattered. Victoria looked at the notebook, then at the line behind her. Her posture stayed straight, but the control had shifted. It was no longer hers alone. A man from the second row stepped forward, stopping just short of the chain. What kind of cost? He asked. Not aggressive. Just direct. That was new. I kept my eyes on the page. Usage fee, I said. Maintenance responsibility. Liability coverage. Each word landed clean. Structured. Not emotional. The kind of terms that cannot be argued with easily. A woman behind him shook her head slightly, like she was recalculating something in real time. Another driver lowered his phone, no longer recording, just listening. That shift spread faster than before. It was not about me anymore. It was about them. Victoria inhaled slowly. I could see the effort in it now. Measured. Controlled. This is unreasonable, she said. The words were steady, but the timing was late. Too late. I shook my head once. This is what should have been in place from the start, I replied. The difference between those two statements hung in the air. One was opinion. The other was structure. And people could feel that. The man near the front nodded once, almost unconsciously. That was the 14th signal. Alignment was beginning. Not fully. But enough. The chain rattled softly as a light breeze passed through. The sound carried under the bridge and back up again, hollow and steady. It felt like a reminder. This was not temporary anymore. This was defined. Victoria turned slightly toward the line, finally facing them more directly. We will handle this internally, she said. But her voice did not carry the same weight as before. Too many variables now. Too many eyes. The woman with folded arms stepped closer, now standing beside the man. We were not told about any of this, she said. Calm. But firm. That statement shifted everything again. It moved the pressure inward. Not toward me. Toward her. Victoria paused. Longer than any pause before. That silence stretched across the bridge, settling into the space between every car, every person. I lowered the pen slightly, still not writing. Not yet. Because this moment mattered more than the terms themselves. It was about acknowledgement. About recognition. About who actually understood what was happening. I looked at Victoria again. Really looked this time. Not at her posture. Not at her tone. At her timing. And it was gone. The precision she started with had faded. Replaced by reaction. She turned back to me slowly. What guarantees do we have? She asked. That question was different. Not control. Not dismissal. Risk. I tapped the pen lightly against the paper. Once. Soft. Audible. That depends on what you agree to, I said. The simplicity of that answer landed heavier than anything else. Because it left the outcome open. Shared. The engines idled. The air held. No one spoke immediately. And that was when I realized something had shifted completely. They were no longer asking if they could cross. They were asking under what conditions they could. The pen touched the paper, but I still did not write. Not yet. The moment held longer than any of them expected. The engines idled behind Victoria, softer now, like even the machines were waiting for a decision. I looked at the line again. Faces had changed. No more impatience. No more assumption. Just focus. That shift stayed with me. Victoria stood still, but not rigid anymore. The confidence she walked in with had thinned into something else. Calculation, yes. But also awareness. That mattered more. The man near the front stepped closer again, careful not to cross the chain. So what happens now? He asked. Not to her. To me. That change settled everything. I lowered the pen slightly and finally wrote the first line. The sound of ink on paper was quiet, but it carried. Heads tilted. People leaned in without realizing it. Small movements. Big impact. Defined access agreement, I said as I wrote. Each word slow. Clear. Real. Victoria watched the page, not me. That told me exactly where her focus had moved. Control had shifted from voice to document. From assumption to structure. We need time to review, she said. The words were careful now. Not dismissive. Not commanding. Just measured. I nodded once. You have time, I said. But not access. That line landed heavier than anything before it. A ripple moved through the crowd. Not loud. Not sharp. Just recognition. The boundary was no longer theoretical. It was real. The chain between us moved slightly as a breeze passed through. The metal links clicked softly against each other. A simple sound. But it marked the moment. Victoria glanced back at the line, then forward again. Slower this time. No quick adjustments. No immediate answers. That silence was different. It was acceptance. Not full. Not comfortable. But present. The woman who had stepped forward earlier looked back toward the cars, then at Victoria. We need to figure this out, she said. Calm. Direct. That voice carried further than the horns ever did. Victoria did not answer her right away. That delay said more than anything else. I closed the notebook halfway, leaving the page visible but incomplete. Not final. Not signed. Just started. That mattered. It left space. But it also set direction. I stepped back from the chain one pace, giving the entrance a little more air. Not opening it. Not yet. Just shifting the space. The crowd adjusted with me. Subtle. But visible. They were no longer pressing forward. They were holding position. That was new. That was control redistributing itself. I looked at the bridge one more time. The steel beams, the weight, the structure that had carried everything without question. Until now. It had always been silent. Always assumed. Not anymore. I turned back to Victoria. Her eyes met mine, steady now, but different. Less certain. More aware. She nodded once. Small. Controlled. But real. And that was enough. Because it meant she understood. Not fully. Not comfortably. But clearly. The system she had relied on was no longer invisible. It had edges now. Terms. Boundaries. Cost. I slid the pen into my pocket and closed the notebook completely. The sound was soft. Final enough for now. Behind her, engines began to shut off one by one. The air shifted again. Not tense. Just quiet. Like something had reset. I rested my hand on the chain for a moment, feeling the last of the vibration fade out. Then I let go. Because this was no longer about stopping them. It was about what came next. And they all knew it now. The bridge was not theirs anymore.